But let me first start with something that is very important to get out. This crowd knows it, but it's a message in the way I package it that I'd love you to share with your families and your coworkers, which is the fact is we're at a point in life where we're saying goodbye to linear thinking. If you think about the notion that that the human mind, our brain, evolved over the last 150,000 years in an environment that used to be local and linear. Local meaning that everything that touched your lives happened within a day's walk. And linear meaning that the lives of your great-great-grandparents, your life, your children, their children, everything remained the same. Nothing changed generation to generation. And that's the way it was when our brain evolved as part of being a Homo sapien. But today, of course, the world is very different. We're living in a world that's exponential and global, and literally something happening in South Korea or Japan affects us minutes later. Exponential in that your lives and your children's lives are extraordinarily different, let alone the lives of your grandparents and yourself. So when you think about that, we are living on the red line. We're living this linear life, and our brain knows how to make linear projections. And that's just the way we inherently are. But the world is moving on that yellow exponential line. And if you think about it, the difference between those two is what I call disruptive stress. What does that mean? It means billion-dollar companies going out of business overnight and billion-dollar companies coming to existence out of no place. Going from zero to $1.8 billion, YouTube, acquired 18 months later by Google. Or Groupon going from $0 to $6 billion in valuation in 2 years. We are creating wealth and value at a rate that has never been on this planet before. It's extraordinary, and what's really going on is it's being driven by a series of exponential technologies, all underpinned by computers, right? AI and robotics, nanomaterials, biotechnology, synthetic biology, 3D manufacturing, computers, embedded network systems, all of these things, because they're on that exponential curve, are allowing us literally to topple old industries and create brand new ones. So this is Moore's law. You've seen this chart before. It's the fact that the rate at which computer speed is increasing and the density of circuitry is doubling on the order of every 18 months. But there are two things that I want you to see from this chart. The first is over the last 100 years, the rate and pace and growth has been pretty consistent. Through recession and depression and good time and wartime, it literally has been a constant rate of growth of faster computing machines allowing us to build faster computer machines. Which means to me it should be somewhat projectable into the future. The second thing is that this curve is plotted on a log scale on the left. And even though it's plotted on a log scale, it's curving upwards, which means that the rate of change, the rate is yet accelerating. The rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. So if we, in fact, project that and look forward, and you may have seen these numbers. This is the work of my partner, Ray Kurzweil. You know, last year in 2010, we were computing at 10 to the 11th cycles per second for the average $1,000 laptop. By 2023, the average $1,000 laptop is computing at 10 to the 16th cycles per second, which happens to be the rate at which the brain, as a pattern recognition machine, is able to, in fact, compute itself. So when the average $1,000 laptop is computing at the rate of the human brain. Now let's project it another 20 years later when the average $1,000 laptop is computing at the rate of the entire human race. So what happens in our world, what happens in our, it's literally infinite computing. The ability that computing capacity becomes available as much as you need it, where you need it, literally for free. So we're starting to see a lot of this technology enter the mainstream press, where your families are starting to read about it. I love the 3D Stradivarius, the 3D printed Stradivarius, the beginning of the brain-computer interface, and the success that was Watson and IBM recently. And you know, this was my favorite headline of all time. Watson vanquishes human opponents. I mean, that's a pretty cool headline. So how many folks here actually watched the Watson-IBM competition? All right, not enough. So I want to show you a piece of that competition, because it really is historic, and it really is hilarious. So let's watch just a small clip of that, if we could.
Ken, you're in the first position. Please make a selection.
Oh, I've never said this on TV. Chicks dig me for 200, please, Jimmy.
Kathleen Kenyon's excavation of this city, mentioned in Joshua, showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson.
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct. Watson.
Who is Mary Leakey?
You're right. Watson.
What is Crete?
Yes.
Let's finish Chicks Dig Me.
Edmel.
Come on, guys, wake up. That's funny. So when I look at the future, I see a number of new $100 billion plus industries coming online. You know, it's been computers, mobile phones, internet, social media. This next decade, it's biotech and networks, AI and robotics and 3D printing, and then, of course, the big one, nanotechnology. So we are here, in fact, the X Prize, my entire team, focused on the design of a prize we're very passionate about, autonomous auto. This is to take over the great work done by DARPA with the Grand Challenge and the Urban Challenge, and to literally take it the next step to the consumer, to finish the work that was started. What does this mean? The goal here is to create that paradigm change for the average consumer around the world, especially here in America, where you say, wow, these cars can drive better than all of us. And in fact, the most dangerous part of the drive is the human control system. So our goal here is to create a competition where we're going to pit the best drivers around the planet against the best robotic vehicles year on year and create that winning moment, that Kasparov Deep Blue moment, where the robotic car is able to beat the best human drivers in a dynamically dynamic obstacle course, where things are popping up, popping out, road conditions are changing, everything is changing, and you watch and you see and you go, wow, truly, they're much better. And to give us back saved lives, save fuel, and save time.
So for those of us in the technology industry, and on a personal level, I think, there can be no greater satisfaction than being associated with the design, the construction, and the refinement of a complex piece of technology that eventually becomes absolutely indispensable in the affairs of humans. Now, not every technological innovation can make that claim, but I believe that unmanned systems as a class of technologies can already make that claim. No longer are these systems confined to military uses, and no longer are they simply curiosities of limited capability. And very importantly, no longer are they unreliable or unaffordable. Unmanned systems have demonstrated their value, and today they are already truly indispensable in the conduct of so many vital missions. This is indeed a golden age for these technologies, and the U.S. currently leads in this area. And of course, that fact is not lost on the rest of the world. Last month, there was an interesting article in the Washington Post. It was titled, "The Global Rush is On to Match U.S. Drones." It noted that more than 50 countries have purchased surveillance UASs. The article quotes a law professor who studies the technologies and saying, quote, "This is the direction that all of aviation is going," end quote. The article pointed out that in the coming decade, global spending on unmanned systems will reach $94 billion, and that several other nations are working hard to ramp up their unmanned R&D programs, nations that have no export controls preventing them from selling their systems abroad. Let me be clear about a perspective that I and our company feel very strongly about. Today's export restrictions are hurting this industry in the U.S. without making us any safer. And they could cause the U.S. to relinquish to other nations, ultimately, its lead in these technologies. We've seen this play out before. We saw it play out in the satellite industry just a couple decades ago. Then we were so concerned about others gaining what we saw as the force multiplier benefit of satellite communications that we essentially made it impossible for U.S. companies to sell communication satellites to our allies, those we work with every single day. We somehow thought that we had a corner in that technology, satellites. But we were badly mistaken. The very policies that were intended to keep this technology secure for us actually encouraged others who could not buy it from us to develop their own. In fact, they even marketed their products as ITAR-free. America lost valuable export opportunities, and we are no safer as a result. We need to learn from that lesson and from several other lessons just like it. Today, the U.S. is struggling to sell unmanned aircraft to our allies, while other nations prepare to jump into the marketplace with both feet. In a repeat of the satellite example, the thinking seems to be that our allies will neither build their own nor buy them from those who will be motivated by the perversity of our policies to build them themselves. However, as that Washington Post article observes, earlier this year, India, for example, announced it will begin development of its own unmanned attack capability. It makes perfect sense for India to be doing that. Now, the good news is that the Department of Defense is promoting what is clearly the best export reform policy, building higher walls around fewer things. And for this, I believe they deserve credit and encouragement because there are issues to get worked here. The primary motive for such reforms makes eminent sense: to better support our allies and to codify the technology sharing that occurs every single day on the battlefield and in the joint training that we perform. This common sense approach recognizes the clear advantages of solidifying a common capability with like-minded allies. After all, our allies must seek to field these capabilities. It's my point of view that it is in our nation's best interest to ensure that our allies have the best systems available, procured with as much fiscal efficiency as possible.